everybody, it's Lori Bradley here in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and it is time for Fun Fold Friday. I am using today the Gathering Together Suite, and I am becoming a fall convert. Fall is not my typical favorite, but I am loving this particular suite and the colors that go with it. And don't tell my friends, but Old Olive is growing on me. Oh my goodness. All right, so this particular card looks like a basic card, looks like it's just the card, regular card, but if you open it up, it shows both sides of the designer series paper. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We are going to start with a 5.5 by 5.5 square of cardstock, 5.5 by 5.5. And on one of the sides, just one, I scored this at 4 1/4, and that's going to make our card front like that. So our card front, the cardstock, is just a small little flap, okay? The first thing I'm going to do is I have a 4 by 5 1/4, 4 by 5 1/4 piece of white cardstock, and this is going to be the inside, and this is where you would write your sentiment, write whatever you wanted to write. And we're going to put that on that back panel so that it's centered, just like that. Okay, now we want our designer series paper to go on the front of our card. Doesn't matter, fall leaves are falling, just make sure that the back side shows and it's going the right direction. So that's also 4 by 5 1/4, and it's going to fit right on top of that white piece, so you won't even notice that the white piece is there. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to put adhesive along this flap, or this side. It's going to stick underneath the flap. Okay, so just along that edge, and I'm going to put that right on top. Line it up with the white, and then I'm going to close that flap. Make sure you use a good strong adhesive because that flap is going to open. That's going to be your opening, so make sure that that's attached nicely. All right, now I'm also using the Gathering Together embossing folder with the leaves, and I'm just going to put that right on that panel to add a little bit of interest there. And this is 1 inch by 5 1/4. You could use another piece of designer series paper if you wanted. You can use an embossing folder, or you could just leave it plain. Plain would also be perfectly fine. All right, so we have this. All we need now is to decorate. And I've just chosen one of the words. I didn't want it to be too heavy because the designer series paper is not quite as strong as the cardstock. So I don't want to put too much to make it completely, it's not going to rip our designer series paper or anything. So I just cut a rectangle, and I'm going to say, your friendship means the world to me. The stamps in this stamp set are very nice. They're very fall, and thankfully, lots of thanks going on at this time of year, and pretty leaves also. And the leaves are a distinctive pattern, and I already stamped those, so you didn't have to watch me die cut those today. But I'm going to stamp the sentiment. This card looks super fancy, but it is really just scoot my paper back. All right, looks super fancy, but it takes the same amount of time as a regular card. All right, now let's go ahead. We're going to attach that, and I'm actually going to attach it partly onto that cardstock just so it has a little bit more stability. Okay. Now I've got 2 leaves. I have a leaf which I stamped in Cajun Craze, and you can kind of see the distinctive pattern. It's a little bit different. It's not a solid stamp. And then I also did an early espresso acorn, and I went ahead and I did those. And I'm gonna put the leaf underneath my words, maybe about like that. So I'm gonna put adhesive down one side of my leaf, and I'm going to attach that. Make sure that's attached. And then I'm going to put the sentiment piece on dimensionals. I'm just gonna pop that up just to give it, I love dimension. But like I said, I'm gonna put one of those dimensionals on the cardstock side so that it has some more stability. Like that. And then I'm gonna also pop up my acorn, and I'm just gonna put him down below. Just kind of like a little fall accent. And then you'll notice there's a gap right there. So let's use some of the twine, the Early Espresso and Old Olive linen thread. I think I'm gonna use Old Olive for this one. And we're gonna tie a lorry bow on there. I just wrap it around my fingers, loop it, just like that. And then tie this piece around the middle to hold it. I do that so that I have, especially with linen thread, because that way it's a thicker bow. It looks a little more substantial. And then it's big enough that I can take my glue dot. Usually I lay my ribbon on the glue dot, but those are pretty big dots. So I'm gonna take that off of there and roll it a little bit so that it hides behind that knot. And then I'll add it to my card. You can still trim it a little bit. It kind of goes off a little bit off the side of the. All right, and then of course, what's a card without a little bit of bling? And also in the suite are the Cajun Craze and gold dots, which are so pretty. And I'm just gonna add some of those to add a little bit of extra sparkle. This paper is so pretty. It has flecks of gold, has browns, greens, oranges, all of the fall colors. And there we go. So our card front, like I said, looks like a regular card front. And when you open it up, you can see both sides of that beautiful paper. All right, so the show both sides of the Designer Series paper front fold. And that is all for today's Fun Fold Friday. I will see you next week. Have a great weekend.